What's up, leaders? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Lead From Here podcast. I am Jason. Today we are talking about how to integrate contractors and the things that can typically go wrong and the things that hopefully go right for you when you're integrating contractors as a company. Now, the great thing about contractors is they can unlock potential within your ability to deliver something quickly, comparatively to not having them, but also they can be the downfall of your project. And usually it's not the contractors themselves. Sure, there are companies out there that are terrible at contracting and they hire people that are not the best. I will caveat everything I'm about to say with you need to do your due diligence. You need to make sure that you're hiring a solid contracting company and getting solid, proven contractors in your teams. There are companies that will put really solid contractors in front of you for the interview and then give you their bottom of the barrel because you're new or because you're not paying as much or you have a ridiculous timeline or whatever. It's important that you know that the people that will be working on your project are the people that you're actually interviewing. So make sure you ask that question. That's kind of the baseline of like making sure you know who you're working with and you don't get a bunch of random people that you didn't interview beforehand. With that, let's get into the meat of this. Ultimately, the biggest downfall, usually if you've done the due diligence and you hire a solid, proven contracting company, is that you are not setting them up for success as a leader or as a company. And that's something that I see more often than not, is the expectation for a contractor is so high because they're expensive, right? They're as expensive as your top talent, maybe even more depending on what company you're working for and where they're working out of. So when you factor in that like you're paying for somebody that's as good as one of your top talent, you're expecting the same thing, and that's an improper expectation. If your company specializes in any way, they're coming off the street and they probably know nothing about your product and the specialization that comes with it. So they're going to have to learn. That means it's going to be a longer ramp than just, hey, I'm going to go work at McDonald's or hey, I'm going to go work somewhere. That's a very not specialized and it's very kind of templated or just already set up kind of cookie cutter system. So the more specialized you are, the more ramp you have to expect out of a contractor. That tends to be the biggest issue I see with companies is that they bring in a contractor and they're like, all right, we're going to bring in these 3 contractors. We're going to let them work for 3 months and they're going to knock out this entire project. And it's like your internal team said it'll take 6 to 9 months for a team to do. They're not going to be able to knock it out in 3 months. It doesn't matter how good they are. It's just unrealistic. So you have to make sure that you're matching expectations. Contracting company will usually get their foot in the door by, pushing very aggressive deadlines and setting really, really high expectations. Sometimes unrealistic expectations. Sometimes, again, if you're not highly specialized, maybe they can hit those deadlines. But ultimately, the goal is to get their foot in the door because once you've kind of invested in that contractor, you're not going to pull them out before the project's over. Maybe for the next project you might sell them out. But for that current project, they've got work. If you're hiring out a project to an entire team of contractors, the best baseline is to have your own internal team do it, and the best they're going to do is that. It's probably going to be a little longer because they have to ramp up and understand the product. Your internal team doesn't need to do that. What about like an integrated team? What about when you got a team that you're already working with that has a project ahead of them and you're going to bring in contractors to help kind of push that along? Where do the pitfalls happen there? And that's usually around the same thing as underestimating how much time it takes to ramp up on your product. Depending on how specialized it is, it can be a very long ramp. And the best thing to do, what people usually don't do, is they just bring the contractors in, let them go. They have, a small window of like, hey, this is how the product works, and this is what it is. And they do a quick download of all the information and say, all right, go get them because you're expensive and we want you to start working. And that's important to put them to work as fast as possible. When you're in this situation, it's important to look at the different aspects of the business. How specialized is it? Is it not that specialized? Understand that over time, it will take time for that person to ramp up, that person or persons, depending on how many contractors you have, to ramp up into the team and being a contributing member. A lot of times you expect one for one, hey, I'm paying this person as much as my top talent. They should be running as fast as the top talent. And that's just not the case. They're going to have ramp up that your top talent doesn't have. So the key thing, and the thing that I would always recommend to do, is to tie up your contractors with your best people. If you do that, it will unlock that contractor faster than just kind of letting them do their thing. Make sure that they're demoing often. Make sure that they're documenting everything they're doing, because when they leave, you don't want all the information to leave with them. That's the best way. Making sure that they're doing all the things and doing the due diligence and making sure you're getting what you pay for. Too often I see companies that will just let a contractor go to work and then let them walk out the door. And you have this piece of functionality that's built, but now all your people have to learn how to support it, how to add things to it, how to do more with it. And that can be extremely expensive. Sometimes just as expensive as hiring somebody to do the job. So if you're going to pay somebody to do it, make sure it is documented very well. Make sure it's demoed often to make sure it's all on path for what you need, and then make sure that ultimately that person leaves and in a good state. Last thing I'm gonna say is I would recommend that you only use contractors when absolutely necessary. Have very, very specific reason for bringing them in. Make sure that specific reason stays kind of adhered to. Make sure the dollars make sense compared to what you're trying to do. And this is an interesting one because it's hard to actually figure out the dollars. What I would always say personally is double it. Like that's the best way to cover your ass. If you don't know what the project's going to be and you've never worked with this contracting company before, or if you've never worked with contractors before, or if you haven't had much success, I would say double it. Whatever you think it's going to cost, double it. And then again, keep track of that. And the next time you do it, figure out how close you were. And whatever that is, double it plus more. It's really important for you to understand the impact, and it's going to be different every project and every company you work with, and every business, depending on how specialized it is, will have different nuances and different things to do it. The important takeaways is make sure when you're bringing people in, time up with your best people. And I'm not talking about like, hey, there's this group of contractors that are just off doing their own thing and they have people that are designated to support them, even though that's not their full support focus. Make sure that you're tying up with people that have dedicated time with these people to make sure that the contractors have everything they need to get the job done as effectively as possible. It also gives you oversight. It allows you to see what's happening and make sure that the documentation's there. Make sure the demos make sense from an implementation perspective and from what the product should do. To make sure you have realistic expectations. It's easy to get ahead of yourself and say that a contractor that you're paying a lot of money should just come in and run. That's not the case. They all need ramp time. Depending on how specialized your company is, they may need more ramp time than a company that isn't as specialized. And so you have to take that into account. You have to understand your business and your product as best as you possibly can so you can understand how quickly somebody can actually make impact, and be realistic. Don't short-sighted them, because short-sighting them is just going to short-sight yourself in the long run, because the work is the work. It will always reveal itself every time. So you can pretend like it's not. That's where teams that you already have taking an estimate will give you a better understanding, and I would add a large percentage on top of whatever they think, because they already know the product. They're already there. They're already in the ecosystem. They know what's going on. So expect that it's going to take 20 to 30 to maybe even 50% longer than your internal team would take just from the ramp time alone and trying to understand the business. And lastly, just remember to only use them when necessary. That is the key, is just use them when it's absolutely necessary. Try to use your internal teams wherever possible. And if you have, the business to build out more teams, do that. Don't be the leader that brings in a team of people that you know you're going to have to fire in a year. That's time for a contractor. Like, know when the situation calls for it and then make the call. And then use the other tips to make sure that you do it in an effective manner. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please hit me up, Jason@leadfromhere.co. Otherwise, take care.